Hello everyone, welcome to this class. So in this class we will be discussing about a couple of topics of function. In last class we have discussed the basic, how we define the function, how we call the function, and what are the types of parameter we can pass, what are the return, default return, and the values we can define. So today we will be discussing the advanced topics of function where we'll pass the arguments quarks, and then we'll discuss more about the return multiple values and what is the scope. Then lambda function. This is one of the most important topic. And then higher order function and functional tools. And this is the topic where we have more questions in interviews, decorators and closures. Then we will discuss recursion and where we will talk about the performance of your application when we use recursion. And then we will discuss about the AIML use cases. And there will be a couple of interview questions today class. So before moving to this class, I would like to have a quiz. So again, it will have 10 questions and each question has four options. Out of four, there is one question, one is solution. So I'll paste the link into comment box. So this quiz has 1 point for each question. You will be getting the total points when you will go complete this quiz. And at the end you will see the answer also when you submit. So let's do it first and then we will discuss about the functional topics. We'll continue on the call. So variable length arguments, if we have star args, it means arg tuple of positional arguments. And if we have argument in this way where we will have um, star star quark, it means dictionary of keyword arguments. So let's take one example of args first. We'll understand that. So let's say I'll have a daf and where I'll say variable of args, and here let's suppose I'll take the first one where I'll use star args. So what the exactly docstring does, and I'll return it here. Let's say this is the arg. Yeah, I'll do like this. So I'll return the args. So what happens is this function will take a variable number of positional arguments and return them as a tuple. So now, so what we are returning here, a tuple containing all the positional arguments. This is a docstring for this. Now what I'm doing here is there is a function which accepts the arguments, and how you can pass these arguments, you can pass in this way. So this is a function calling where we are calling the function with multiple values. So you can pass multiple values and these values will be considered as tuple. So that is the default behavior. So even though if you have multiple values in this way, let's say num1 equal to int of input, enter num1, num2, and I'll take num3 also. So if I pass these three numbers into variable of args where my argument is in this way, it means it convert all these values of num1, num2, num3 into tuple form automatically. So it will be considered as a tuple form. In fact, if you print here also, print type of args, then if you run this, so let's say enter num1 10, num2 20, num3 30. So it will consider as all the values which you are passing into the parameters. These values will be considered as in the tuple form. So that is the uses of args. So wherever you see args, it means whatever values you're passing, this will be considered as tuple form. Now, depends on your use case, you can unpack it into multiple variables. Let's say I have one variable args here, and I want to use only, let's say, I'll unpack it. So how we can do that? X comma y comma z equal to arg. So if I do like this and print it, so within this function, inside this function, we are unpacking the arguments, like all the tuple arguments, and then we are saying x, y, z. So if you see, x is now a, y is b, z is c for this function call. But if I have 100, enter number 1, then enter number 2, 200, and number 3, 300. So you can pass all these three values here and accept it as arguments, and then you can unpack also. So it's not like if we are passing three values and we can unpack into three variables. Not really. You can do more also. Let's say I'll pass num4. So num4 equal to int input, enter num4, and I'll pass here num4. And when we are unpacking it from the tuple, now it will give an error. Why? So let's see it. 100, 200, 300, 400. So it says too many value to unpack. So one of the thing which you need to consider whenever you are unpacking from tuple, make sure the number of arguments you are using or number of the variables you are using at left side, the value should be the same. Then it will work. Otherwise, there is a way. So you can put star here. So let's say I want the first value to be stored in x, then the last value will go to z, the remaining will go to y. So let's see this now. So num1 100, 200, 300, 400. So if you see now, x will become 100, y will be the list of the remaining elements, and z will be pointing to, the z will be pointing to the end element. So whenever you use args, and if you are unpacking it within that function, make sure you are doing it correctly. Otherwise, what happens is the best practice is go with this approach if you need it. Otherwise, do not unpack in this way, or you can write the proper docstring. This function accept only these number of positional arguments, and then you can fix it. So it's based on the uses or definition, but you make sure whenever you are using args, you are doing the proper unpacking and using it. Or there is a way you can directly use args in your program. So let's suppose I want to do the sum of all numbers which I'm passing here. So now I can do it directly on args, no need to unpack it. So I can do in this way, print sum of args. So it will print you one sec. Yeah. So let me do it in this way. So you can apply the logic like tuple form. So let's say sum equal to 0, and then for I in args, sum of I, we can print sum. If you see here, if I run it, the output is okay. I'm passing here a string. That is why. So I'll just comment this section. In fact, this also. So if you run it now, enter num1, 200, 300, 400, and 500. So the output will be 1400. So if you want to do operation on directly on tuple or the sequence, you can do that. So if you really require to unpack, then only you do it. Otherwise, you can use directly as a tuple. So let's suppose I have another function def I'll create this function as variable of Kwargs, and this function, I'll write this bug string. This function take a variable, or it can take multiple variables, number of keyword argument, and returns them as dictionary. So if we see this example, what it returns a dictionary. So the args, when we talk about the args, this is focused completely on tuples. The number of variables or the number of values you are passing, it creates the tuple form of all values. Similarly, if we are using quarks and you have two stars, so that is the syntax. So if you are using two stars, or these are the two pointers also sometime we call it, the arg is a variable number of keyword arguments. So what we are doing is we are calling this function variable of quarks and passing couple of values. But these values are not directly passed now. We are saying this is the variable name equal to Rohan, age is 30 and DOB is this. So we are clearly telling that these are the variables and holds these values. So I'll use the first one. Let's run it. So if you see here what it is happening, let me just comment this section also so that there should not be any confusion. Fine. So now let's run this again. Okay. So let me delete it. I'll run the cleaner mode. So if you see now, the beauty of this function is it accepts all the values and variables and create a dictionary out of it. So now this is the internal working of the quarks. So whatever values you're passing, let's suppose if you're passing in this way, data equal to variable of quarks, and now if I pass like this, let's say 70, 80, 90, as we were passing in for the arguments, so it will give an error. Why? Because this function is having quarks and it accept now the proper key and value. See here, variable of quarks takes 0 positional argument, but 3 were given. So here we need to pass the actual key also for this, because it is gonna convert this into dictionary. So I can say like this, num1 equal to 70, num2 is 80, num3 is 90. So if I pass in this way and I'll print data, so the output is a dictionary form. So you can create dictionary of your variables and values together, but make sure you are passing in that way. So I'll take one dynamic example. We'll get some input from the user. Let's say name equal to input, enter name, enter age, right? And maybe we can say address. So enter an address. So I'll create another function which will accept it and print the entire dictionary. So I'll say def info, or I can say create dictionary. So I'll pass here quarks. So then again, this is a doc string. It returns a dictionary. Return quark. So what I am doing now, these are the variables and the value I am asking from user, and then I am passing to create dict. So let's say employee info equal to create dict, and passing here name equals to name, age equal to age, the address is this, and printing employee info. So if I run this, let's say Rohan is name, age is 40, address is BLR Bangalore, then it creates the dictionary out of it. So this is the way usually we use it for creating the dictionary, where you map the value you are getting from the input, user's input, and this is the key which you are defining it, and you can convert it into dictionary. And if you want to perform more operation into it as dictionary, you can do it. So like this, let's say if any condition, let's say if um, name not in Quark, then we can say unknown. Right? So now if you see I'm passing name here, maybe I'll call it again. I'll not pass name again. Employee info 1. So I'll say 1. So create dict and I'll not pass name this time. I'll pass only two values. So if we run this, enter name Rohan, age 30, address is VLR. So if you see when we are calling it the second time, we are not passing name and we are setting it within that function. We are checking if name not in Quark. So Quark is a dictionary now. This dictionary is having the key called name. If it doesn't have, then assign it to unknown or maybe any default value. So it's up to you how you are defining. But the beauty of this is you can define all the logic within this function and you can create a dictionary or you can create JSON. Depends on your use case. You can create JSON data also. Right? Because now Quark is our dictionary. So you can do you can convert into JSON and send it back in API response when we define the web application. So it's up to your use case. So let's talk about this function mixed args. What we are trying to do here is we are passing multiple arguments or parameters to this function. So arg1 is a normal positional argument, first positional argument, right? And this is also another argument. You can have n number of arguments based on your use case. And this is args, star args, and then we are passing quark. So now these are the four different types of, or I say these are the same type and these are the two different types of args and quarks. Now what we are doing is we are using this mixed arg function to print the each value whatever we are passing. Let's say print arg1 is arg1 and arg2 is arg2, and then we are printing args and quarks, right? And this is where we are creating the dictionary of each. So these are the key fixed keys being created and these are the values which we are passing. So how you can pass values? We are calling the function here mixed args 10 comma 20. So these two values will be assigned to argument 1, argument 2. Then the remaining values will go to args as tuple form. So let's say here we are passing 10 comma 20 comma 30 comma 50. So first two value will be assigned to arg1, arg2. Then these three value will be considered as tuple and will be assigned to args. Then these two values which have the key and value, this will be converted into dictionary. So if you print result now, if you see that argument 1 is 10, argument 2 is 20, args are now tuple of 30, 40, 50, and quarks is the entire dictionary. So we can do it. You can have hybrid also. Now let's do some more uh, function calling in different ways. So let's say, yeah, this is also one of the good example. Data equal to mixed arg, where we are passing different types of values. Let's say hello is one string, world is another string, Python programming is also another string. So what will happen in this case? Based on our definition, what is the function definition? Arg1 go to hello, arg2 will take world, and then this arg will take remaining arguments as tuple form. And if we have this kind of calling, it will consider key value pair. If I run it now, see here, arg1 is hello, arg2 is world, args will be Python and programming as a tuple form, and Kwargs will be the dictionary of language Python version 3.8. So this is the way you can use in hybrid mode. But make sure whenever you are using args and Kwargs together, so order matters. So let's say how. If I change it from, I'll just copy it and then I'll change. So let's say if I do like this, arg1 comma arg2, then quarks, then arg, like this, it gives you error. Why? It says parameter cannot follow quarks as args. That's the problem. So order matters. Okay. Like we have discussed in last call also, how the default function or the default parameters should be followed from non-default, right? So we are passing first non-default arguments, then default arguments. Similarly here also, that is the Python's rule. You should not do like this. Whenever you are using quarks and args together, always remember first put args, then quarks. Okay, that is one thing. Another thing is, again, I will just repeat that also. Let's say if you're passing any default value to your arguments, you cannot say like this, args, arg1 equal to 100 and then arg2. Arg2 is mandatory, right? This is also going, this will also not work. What will work? So what you can do, if you have default arguments, this is non-default argument, argument 1. Argument 2 can be a default arguments like this, and arg will go to first place. So arg will go to, let's say here, like this. So if you have multiple hybrid approach, if you want to follow, make sure this should be the order. Arg1 means non-default argument first. Then if you have default argument, you pass those, and then you can use args, then you can use quarks. Like that you can go into hybrid way. Okay, now so let's discuss about the next topic is where you can return multiple values from any function. So let's suppose I have a function and let's say minimax function. So what it does, it accept an argument. Either you can pass a list or you can pass a tuple. So let's say we will see it in two ways. So let's say one is my list. So this is the doc string for that. What it does, this function takes a list of numbers and return the minimum and maximum values. So what we are doing here is we have a list, and this list is having these values 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 9. Then we are calling this function minimax. And now this list is list type, right? In fact, the way we can write our code is this, like this, right? This is the best way. Uh, this is the best practices you can use. So we are saying parameter passed in this function is list type and it returns a tuple. So in fact our doc string is also saying same thing. This function takes the list of numbers and return the minimum maximum values. So whenever you return multiple values, Python automatically converts it into tuple form. So if you see here, we are returning two values. One is min and another is maximum. So it creates the tuple from that and then it returns. So if you run this program, see the output. The minimum is 1, maximum is 9. Now, what we are trying to do here is, so instead of printing like this, I'll comment this and what I do, print type of result. So if you see here, whenever you are returning multiple values from a function, it returns an tuple form. So this is tuple type. If it is a tuple, then what are the values it contains? It contains 1 and 9. So you can return n number of values from a function. Then Python compiler creates the tuple of it and creates the entire one object, return it back. Now it's up to us how we are using it. So if you see this line, we are printing the index 0 because tuple support indexing and index 1 is my maximum. That is the contract. So if I run it, minimum is 1, maximum is 9. There is another way also to do it, like unpacking and packing. Right? So I can say minimum comma maximum equal to minimax and we are calling numbers. So instead of storing into a result variable, we can have two variables directly and this tuple will be unpacked to minimum and maximum variable like this. So what is happening here? So let's say my function is returning two values, right? Min and max. Min of list and max of list, right? L1 or my list. This is the return. Now it's up to us how we are storing it. So while calling the function, we are defining two variables. So let's say minimum and maximum. These are the two variables. And then we are calling that function, find min max, minimax function. Then we are passing a list here. So this function itself return two values, but it has tuple. So this tuple is min max. So 1 and 9. And you know very well we have a tuple unpacking in place. So the number of variables, the number of this tuple element holds, if both are same, this can be assigned like this sequentially. Same thing we are doing here also. So we have two values, minimum and maximum, and we are calling min max with this list, right? And then this function returns two values. These two values are unpacked into these variables. So one way is you can store your entire tuple and access it via indexing, or you can do it directly this also. So most preferred way is this based on our use case. So let's say here we have two values. Maybe you will have 10 values, 13 values, 15 values. So it's up to you how you want to use those values and then unpack it accordingly. So now I'll explain it again. Let's think about the function definition first. What function is saying? It accepts a list type here and it returns a tuple. Now this function is minimax function. Now this is the only one statement which is executed within this function where we are returning multiple values. one value is min of my list. So whatever list we are passing, the minimum number of that is returned. So let's say this case, we are passing min-max numbers, and numbers is this list. The minimum of this list is 1. Then max of my list. So you can have comma separated by comma. Let's say if you want to return multiple values, you should have separated by comma. The max of my list is 9. So internally it looks like 1 comma 9. So we are returning this. You can return more also, comma comma comma, and then separated by comma, and then the elements. Now the default behavior of Python is when you are passing or you are returning multiple values, it creates the tuple. So in result here, you will get a tuple type. And then you can access the elements. So it will create like this, one tuple of 1 comma 9. Now using the indexing of tuple, you can access 0th index, you can access first index. So this is one way we are accessing it. Now other way is because tuple accept unpacking also, packing unpacking concept. So let's take one example of tuple. In fact, we have studied in the tuple class also. Let's say if you have a tuple t1 equal to 100 comma 200 comma 300. You can unpack these value into three different variables like x1 comma x2 comma x3 equal to t1. If you do like this, then what will happen internally? X1 will be assigned 100, 200 will be assigned to x2, and 300 will be assigned to x3. This is how it works. Same thing we are doing here. So minimax of numbers returning 1 comma 9, which is a tuple. Now this variable minimum will be mapped to 1, maximum will be mapped to 9. This is where we are printing it. So the concept is same. Thus the thing is, we are returning multiple values where Python binds it into tuple form, and then you are unpacking it here. So the new topic is lambda functions. We use lambda functions when we do have single expression in your function and there is no statement available. So this is useful for short throwing functions. For example, let's say I am creating a function to do a square. So how I will do that in traditional way? I will define a function def, let's say sq square, right? And I'll have a argument. So argument is, let's say, x, which is integer type, correct? Now what it returns, again it will return an integer. It will return an integer. So what we will do, we will have a data, let's say data equal to x multiply by 2, and then we will say return data. This is the definition in traditional methodology. So this is a function, a square function, which is having an argument and then it returns data. So we need to write it in this a long expression. So instead of writing a long expression for the same, you can do it in single line. How you can do that? So first of all, you define a variable, okay, any variable. That is first thing. Now what is this variable? This variable is nothing, the function name you want to define. Then say equal lambda is a keyword. LAMBDA, lambda is a keyword, Python keyword. Then you need to define arguments, x, y, x, comma, y, comma, z, any arguments. Then colon, and here is your expression or the business logic. So if you have single expression, single logic, so you no need to write any return or anything. This is very simple. So now let me convert this function into lambda. How you can do that? What is the function name is square. So sorry, this naming convention is square. So square square equal to lambda. So lambda will be fixed. So because of this keyword, Python will understand this is a lambda function. How many arguments square has? One argument. So I'll keep argument here x, then colon, then expression. What is the expression? This is the expression. So x into x to the power 2. This is the way you write a lambda function. Like we have list comprehensions sorter way. So for functions also we have lambda. Now how to use this? So in traditional way, how we call this function? We do the function calling in this way. Let me just remove e from here. The square of 5. We call it like this in traditional way. So if you have lambda, same way you need to call. So print square square of 5. So this variable will become your name of the function. Okay. So this can be a user defined. This is an keyword. Then you need to define arguments separated by comma and then expression. That's all. So let's try it first. So I'll create a lambda function here. So let's say square equal to lambda. So in single line, you can do this. Done. 25. You can call it n number of times. Similar way like we are calling function. This is also a function. So again, let's say data equal to square of 10. If you print data, it will give an output is 100. It will work in same way. Functionality is same. Just we are minimizing the line of code. This is one of the best practice. If you have smaller functions, then you can use lambda. So there is one important note here to understand for lambda. So lambdas are great for simple transformations, but for complex logic, use regular functions for readability. So let's say if you have more expressions, more statement, a longer business logic, then you should have a traditional way to define functions. For small units, you can use lambda. So another example is I have converted the same function. This is a traditional way, like you are defining a function and it returns minimax of this list. Same thing you can do here. This is a variable minimax. Then lambda is a keyword. These are the argument, one argument, my list, and then we are returning multiple values. So this also will work in same way. This returns the tuple of multiple values and you will see the output is 1 and 9 in this case. So if I run this, output is 1 and 9. So we have covered now, these are the topics we have covered: parameters, return values, lambda functions. In tomorrow, we will cover high order functions and functional tools, decorators, recursion, and there are a couple of AIML use cases. So we will cover these topics in next class. Thank you for watching this video.